Somewhere between the day you just lived and the sleep waiting to take you, there is a frequency. You won't find it on any dial. It doesn't broadcast on a schedule. It comes when the hour is late and the lights are low, and you are ready to go somewhere without leaving where you are. This is the midnight frequency. What follows are radio dramas, some set in the smoky, rain-soaked world of the old golden age, where private detectives walked dark streets and every shadow had a secret. Some take place closer to now, some venture further out, into times and places that haven't happened yet. All of them are original stories, written in the spirit of the programs that once kept the whole country listening in the dark. From this moment forward, there are no interruptions, no commercials, nothing to pull you back. If you found something here worth returning to, we'd be grateful for your support. The details are in the show notes, but that's for later. Right now, there is only the story. Get comfortable. Let it come.
The road to Halloran Ridge stops being a road about 2 miles below the summit. After that, it is a suggestion, a pale seam of gravel laid across a slope of loose shale, wide enough for one vehicle and generous about nothing else. In summer, it is merely unpleasant. In February, with 11 inches of old snow crusted over and refrozen 4 times, it is a decision you make once and then have to keep making, corner after corner, until you are at the top and the question of whether you should have come is no longer interesting. Wes Kimball made that decision at 4 in the afternoon, in the last honest daylight of the day, and he made it because of a phone call he had not been able to explain to anyone, including himself.
The site's dead. That's the thing. It's been dead 11 years. The county pulled the commercial tenants off it in 15 when they went to the new tower on Beacon, and the power company cut the drop that same fall because nobody was paying the bill. There is no service to that building. There is a hut, a stick, and about 400 pounds of equipment that nobody has been able to justify hauling down. That's it. That is the entire inventory. So when Delia calls me on a Tuesday and says the ridge is transmitting, I tell her what anybody would tell her. I say you're hearing an intermod product, or you're hearing somebody in the valley with a bad amplifier, or you're hearing exactly what you expect to hear on a frequency you've had programmed into that radio since before your kids were born. Ridge is dead. And Delia, who has been right about equipment more times than I have been polite about it, says, "Wes, go up and listen."
He went up and listened. The building at Halloran Ridge is a concrete box 8 feet by 12, built in 1968 by people who expected it to outlast them and were correct. The door is steel, and it had swelled in its frame, and Wes spent 9 minutes with a pry bar convincing it that it was still a door. Inside, the air was colder than the air outside, in the specific way that concrete gets in winter, a cold that is not weather but architecture. There was no ice on the equipment rack. That was the first wrong thing. In a dead building at that elevation, there should have been a skin of frost on every metal surface, and there was not, because something in the rack was making heat.
The repeater's a Wilson Mark IV, 1983. My father installed it, which is not the reason I know that, but it's the reason I know it that well. Cabinet's 1.5 feet of steel, ugly as a filing cabinet, and it will run forever if you leave it alone, and it will run forever if you don't. Power was the question. There's no drop. But there's a bank of 8 lead-acid cells in the corner that were spec'd for a 2-day outage in 1983, and 40-some years later they should have been sulfated bricks, and instead somebody had been maintaining them. Terminals clean, water topped off. Somebody had been coming up that road. And the controller board was lit. Not the transmit lamp, the memory lamp.
He stood in front of it for a while. Then he keyed the handheld on his belt out of habit and said the thing you say into a repeater when you want to know if anyone is there, which is nothing more than your own name and the word listening. And Halloran Ridge answered him.
Marguerite, Tomas, Ada, Ronald, Jimmy, Deborah, Hollis, Ray, Marguerite, Priya, Ronald, Stephen, Ada, Stephen, Hollis.
It's not a computer voice. I want to be clear about that because that's the first place everybody goes. It's not synthesis, and it's not a recording of a person reading a list either. It's 15 different people. Every name is said by the person it belongs to. Marguerite says Marguerite. Ray says Ray. Somebody spliced together 40 years of people announcing themselves on a mountaintop, and they're saying it in an order, and the order is not alphabetical, and it's not chronological. And it took me 2 hours in a cold concrete room to work out what it was. It's how often. It's a frequency count. The machine is listing the people who used it, most to least, and it repeats the top of the list every cycle. Because Marguerite used that repeater more than anybody who has ever lived.
The Wilson Mark IV shipped with a diagnostic feature that nobody at the factory thought about very hard. When the controller heard an identification, it captured a 2-second sample and wrote it to a small, solid-state store, so a technician could confirm the receiver was hearing what it thought it was hearing. The store held about 400 entries. Standard practice was to clear it during service. Someone at Halloran Ridge had never cleared it. Someone had let it fill, and then, when it filled, had added a second board, and then a third, until the diagnostic buffer of a 1983 repeater had become, by accident, and then by intention, the only complete record of who had ever spoken from that mountain.
I found the third board zip-tied to the inside of the cabinet door, hand-soldered. Legible work, if you know what legible work looks like, and I do, because I learned to solder standing on a milk crate next to the man who did it. He didn't put his name on it. He never put his name on anything.
It took Wes until nearly midnight to understand what was actually bothering him, and when he understood it, he had to sit down on the concrete floor of a freezing building and put his hands over his face. The list was 15 names long. He knew every one of them. Marguerite Osei, who ran traffic on that machine every night for 19 years and died in a hospital in Cedar Falls in 2011. Tomas Reyna, who taught half the county how to solder. Hollis, who was 91 and still driving. Ada, Ronald, Ray. 15 names, and not one of them was his father's.
He maintained that site for 22 years. He hauled batteries up that road on a sled. He rebuilt the duplexer twice. He wrote the manual that's still taped inside the cabinet door in handwriting I'd know anywhere. And the machine that remembers everybody does not remember him. I sat there and I thought, it's broken. There's a fault. Some board went bad and took his entries with it, and I'm going to find it, and I'm going to fix it, because that is what we do.
He did not find a fault. He spent 4 hours looking, and the boards were clean, and the store was intact, and the count was honest. Around 3 a.m, the answer arrived, the way answers do at that hour, sideways and unwelcome and obviously true the moment it shows up.
He never transmitted from it. Not once. 22 years, and he never keyed a microphone at that site. He'd come up, service it, run it hot, check the deviation, listen to make sure the machine was doing what it was supposed to do for everybody else, and go home. He listened. That was the whole of it. He was on that ridge to make sure other people could hear each other, and he never once put himself into the middle of it. I used to think that was a kind of coldness. When I was 19, I thought that. I thought a man who spends every Saturday on a mountain and never says a word from it is a man who prefers machines to people. He wasn't preferring machines. He was building a room and then not standing in the middle of it.
The voice cycled again in the cold. Marguerite, Tomas, Ada, Ronald, and Wes Kimball, 47 years old, sat on the floor of his father's building with his back against the rack and listened to 15 people who were mostly gone say their own names into a room that had been keeping them for 4 decades. Then he did the only thing there was to do.
I keyed up, and I said his name, not mine, his, clear on frequency, the way you would if you were checking into a net and you wanted the machine to hear you properly. And the controller lamp flickered, the way it does when it writes.
The next cycle was 16 names long. He is at the bottom of the list. He used the machine once. It will be a long time before he moves up, and he will never reach Marguerite, who has 19 years and a habit of talking that nothing in this world was going to interrupt. But he is on it. And the batteries are topped off, and the terminals are clean, and there is a man who drives up a road that stopped being a road 2 miles below the summit because somebody has to, and because that is, apparently, the family business.
Delia asked me what it was. I told her the truth. I told her it's a diagnostic buffer on a 43-year-old controller board that somebody kept adding memory to until it turned into something else. She said, "That's not what I asked." She said, "What is it?" And I said, "It's a list of everyone who was ever there. That's all it is. Somebody built a thing that remembers. And then he stood outside of it for 22 years, and the only way in was for somebody to say his name."
Halloran Ridge is still transmitting. It is not on any license, it draws no power from any grid, and no authority in the world knows it is there. 8 lead-acid cells and a solar panel the size of a card table and a steel cabinet full of people running in the cold on a mountain that stopped being useful 11 years ago. If you have ever built something and then declined to stand in the middle of it, if you have ever done the work quietly on the assumption that the work was the point and the credit was somebody else's business, if you have ever been the one who listened, somebody has to say your name into it. That is the only way the machine finds out you were there. It might as well be tonight. The midnight frequency. It's later than you think.
This has been the Midnight Frequency. The studio goes dark now. Sleep well.